this Tech Thursday, we have Rachel Berger from Microsoft that's going to be giving us her tips and tips and pointers about all the great features that Microsoft has. Shelley Gladden is she is the host for our Zoom, and we'll be managing the chat and things like that. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen since we have a little PowerPoint. Make sure we don't miss anything. All right. So just a reminder, we do have captioning arranged through ACS, and you can activate the captioning through, there should be a little, captioning button either at the bottom or it might be in the more part where you can activate that. Let's see. So again, today's topic is Microsoft Reading Tools. And today we've got Rachel Berger, and I should have let's see if I can get to it. Sorry. I don't know why this is not working. Okay, anyway, there we go. I wanted to give you the rundown of what we're going to do today. Shelley has set up a few polls so we can figure out who's on our webinar with us today. Rachel will be sharing with us. We have quite a bit of time for question and answer, and then we will have some closing polls at the end. There are also several of our other AbleTech staff members on with us, and so between me and Shelley and the other staff members, we will watch the chat. So if you have questions, even before the question and answer, please be sure and put those in the chat, and we'll try to, get you timely answers while Rachel's still discussing what you're asking about. Shelley, would you like to go ahead with the polls? Let's see. I'll stop share, and you can bring up the polls. There we go. So the first one, please let us know what area you represent serving Oklahomans with disabilities. Higher education, special education, employment, therapy, or other service provider, state agency, or nonprofit. As I predicted, mostly special education.
I'll leave this running for a little bit longer. I forgot I had myself on mute. I was talking to y'all and you couldn't hear me.
I thought you were unusually silent.
I know. The more we do this, you'd think the better we'd get, but then, we get too comfortable sometimes, right?
That's what I was going to say. Sometimes I get too comfortable and I'll just be taking off thinking I'm sharing my screen, and I'm not.
I know. So I don't
see
more numbers coming in, so I'll go ahead and end this poll. I'll share the results if anybody wants to see it. You should be able to see it. The majority is special education, as we predicted.
We're so glad that you all are here, but it's just really good for us to make sure who else we have. So we do have some from higher education, some from employment, which we definitely are so glad, because some of these tools are going to be super for helping people in the workforce. Obviously, the therapy and the service providers, lots of you may be working with young students or adults, but lots of these tools can be helpful for many, as well as the state agencies and the nonprofits. We're glad to have all of you with us. Okay, I think we can go ahead. Was there another poll or just the one?
That's all for now. The others are for the end.
Okay, so that's good for the poll for now. Let's go ahead and bring in Rachel. And Rachel, I didn't give a whole lot of the background, of your background. So if you want to.
That's okay, I can do that.
Yeah, start off with that, and then you've
Sure.
got the next 20 minutes or so, or 20 to 35 minutes.
Well, wonderful. Thanks for having me here today. And I'm going to go ahead and screen share to start out while I introduce myself. And so my name is Rachel Berger. I wear a couple of different hats, as many of you guys do as well. And firstly, I'm here today representing my role with Microsoft, and I'm an assistive technology specialist in the area of learning disabilities. Primarily those that are on the cognitive side, so dyslexia, dyscalculia, and dysgraphia. And in addition to that, I'm the executive director of a Minneapolis-based nonprofit that works with students who have learning differences. And last but not least, I am the parent of 3 sons, 2 of which have their share of learning differences, as I prefer to call them. And so we're all in on learning differently and accessibility and doing what we can to ensure to empower students to reach their full potential in this household. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started today. I think we have a great presentation and some very timely information for those of you that are working with students who have struggles with learning in the traditional sense, and also especially given this time of remote learning. So I'm going to do a couple of different things. We're going to start out in the PowerPoint because I'm new to this group today, and I want to give you guys a little bit of a backdrop on these tools and Microsoft's mission and how these things came to be. So I might move through that part really quickly in the PowerPoint, and then we're going to hop out of the PowerPoint and go straight into demonstrating within the apps. And so as I think it was Kimberly mentioned, if you have questions, type them in, but we do have a generous amount of time at the end for Q&A. And so if we could just type your question as it comes in, but we're going to hold until the end of the presentation to take those questions live. Okay, so I'm starting out with a slide that has the visual image on this slide is some children who are trying to see over a fence. Many of us are familiar with this image. And the reason I like to use this when I start out is that it has a lot of meaning to me as an individual with a learning disability and as someone who works with students who have learning differences. And there's that common misconception that equality and equity mean the same thing and that they can be used interchangeably, especially when talking about education. But the truth is they don't and they can't. The two words are similar, but the difference between them is crucial, especially when talking about students who have learning disabilities. Equity encourages access to the same opportunities specific to needs. So like we're seeing on the right with the individual using maybe 2 blocks to see over that fence, or the other student using maybe 1 block. Before we can enjoy equality, we have to ensure equity. And so I'm going to show you today how with Microsoft's learning tools, we can provide students with equitable access to the curriculum, which helps them to personalize in their learning experience. It helps them to engage in that learning experience and also helps to promote their independence, which is something that all of us are working towards. And so leading up to, again, that backdrop and how these tools came to be, Scholastic put out a survey in 2014, and they had 14,000 educators. I noticed we have a huge group of educators today, specifically in the field of special education. And so that helped to give an understanding of what is it like today in the classrooms versus, say, when you and I were students in the classroom. And so we know that there are a number of challenges today to meet all of those instructional needs. So 3/4 of educators saying that they're working in classrooms where reading levels are spanning 4 or more grade levels. That probably comes as no surprise to many of you, but I was shocked to hear that. 3/4 of our classrooms today having students with special education needs. That can be an IEP, a 504, or some unique level of need that requires accommodation and modification. And half of all our classrooms today have students with English language learners or non-native speakers. And so you can see why up to 50% of instructional time can be lost managing those needs, including assistive technology. And so just want to say something about Microsoft and their, their view on inclusive technology. They like to keep close to heart in mind these 3 categories when they're working on inclusive technology. And the first is students of all abilities, and wanting to enable them to personalize that learning experience in a way that works best for them. And the next is our educators, because they're there in the field, right, with the students every day and wanting to enable them to engage every single learner by providing accessible tools. And then, lastly, on a school level, equity and inclusion are top of mind for everyone, and really wanting to ensure that we meet the needs of all in students. So in 2015, Microsoft held their Global Hackathon, which is something they do every year. And it's something where 1 week out of the year, anyone in the company can work with anyone they like on any technology they like. And so they decided at that time to look at the latest science, research, and technology specifically on dyslexia, because whether diagnosed or not, it impacts the largest percentage of the population's ability to read printed word. And if you're not able to do that, some of the statistics are pretty high and the odds are stacked against you. So they decided to build an add-on into OneNote to serve students who struggle with reading. And they won the hackathon that year, and they went on to learn that not only did this tool help individuals who struggle with reading, but also students who are dysgraphic, students who are non-native speakers, students who had ADHD, and even students who were emerging readers. So something that was built to serve a very inclusive population really has turned out to serve just about anybody. And so without further ado, I'm going to escape out of our PowerPoint here. And I've used 3 different web hosting platforms today, so I'm going to try to remember what I'm doing as I'm sharing again. I'm going to go into my friend OneNote, and that's where we're going to start today. And so those that are hosting me, if you're not seeing my OneNote screen, it's got a purple tab across the top. If you're not seeing that, just please let me know. We're looking at a reading example. It's called The Closet Creature in OneNote. And so, okay, it looks like I'm getting some nods, so everyone's seeing everything appropriately. For those of you that are new to OneNote, OneNote is, if you will, a digital notebook. So remember back in the day when we were going to school, we'd carry like a Trapper Keeper or a 5-subject notebook with all of our subjects, and we had to write in this thing. Well, not anymore. So we've got an electronic notebook here with multiple subjects, and then within those subjects, further content. And I'm looking at again, a story, and my example here is a 3rd grader that I do some work with, and he is dyslexic, and his educator wants to ensure that he has access within the classroom to the grade level content that his peers are reading. And in his case, he's actually reads at an early 1st grade level, and so he needs to be able to access the content in a way that he's ear reading that text. And so what they're doing is they're loading that content into OneNote. We do that by utilizing this insert tab here and then file. And so if you, again, for educators, you can insert both PDF files and Word documents into your OneNote notebook. So thinking about that accessibility piece. And I will show you another way to get information in there once we've completed the features here. So those are 2 options, and you'll notice here, again, I've got this Closet Creature that was loaded in. I'm also going to show you really quickly here, PDF does load in to OneNote, and so you'll get the PDF link here, and then here's the actual PDF. And so there are 2 different ways to get information in. Okay, so let's go back to the Closet Creature, and let's go ahead and show you guys how the Immersive Reader, let me get my Zoom toolbar out of the way. We're going to go to the View tab, and we're going to click on Immersive Reader. And I also want you to start to familiarize yourself with this Immersive Reader icon, because that's going to be important as we move along. Okay, so once we click on Immersive Reader, we get this skin that pops over the page, or a different visual experience, if you will. And down here, we can simply press play, and we will get text to speech.
The Closet Creature by Kelly Hedgeland.
So you guys should be able to hear that. We're getting a nice text to speech. It's a neural text to speech. Sounds really wonderful. If you're an auditory person, if I was comparing it to different things, this is really great. We have over here our voice settings, and so we can control the speed at which the content is being read aloud to us. And this is really important because when we work with a multitude of different students, say individuals who have, dyslexia or issues processing language, maybe because they have auditory processing disorder, the ability to control how that speed comes at them so that they can appropriately comprehend and process is very important. Sometimes students are sensitive to the voice selection, or in the case of my sons, they're just simply tired of hearing female because they associate it with mom and they think I nag a lot lately. I don't know, maybe you guys do too though with this remote learning thing. So hoping I have some friends out there that sympathize with me. Over here under our text preferences, we can increase our text sizing. We could also increase our text spacing. And these are really important because, again, you know, publishers put out content in a similar manner, same font size, and believe it or not, not all individuals prefer to consume that content in the same manner. Specifically, think about our students who are emerging readers, or even our young adults who are entering that workplace and might be struggling readers themselves. The ability to change that and personalize that experience is very important. So I'm gonna show you, or we have font choices, but I'm gonna move down here to our background colors. These are based off of what back in the day were called Erlin overlays. And so back when I went to school, they had these little overlay films that went over top of the paper to reduce eye strain for a multitude of reasons. And so whether you're reducing eye strain, or whether you have low vision, or whether it's simply a preference, all of these options are here. And even more important, you don't have to prove a need to have these options turned on. They simply are there for you to choose from. And moving up to our grammar options here, we have syllableification. So we can have our words broken into syllables all the while we're highlighting and having that text read aloud. So let's just see how that is. Okay, and then we also have highlighting of parts of speech. So I can highlight nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. I could show the labels above that text as well. And so as not to conflict with our background color, I can choose the color of my highlighting. I'm going to turn that off for my own distractibility as I move on to the reading preferences. And so I've got something called line focus mode. So again, I'm not sure about you guys, but when I was in school learning to read, we had these things called reading rulers. And it was just a cutout that oftentimes teachers made so that we had the ability to focus on a certain amount of text at one time. So now you'll see these are built in, and the user has the ability to, you know, utilize those at several different levels here. And then my favorite feature is something done in conjunction with Boardmaker. And those of you special educators on our call today, you'll recognize Boardmaker. They make the visual images for individuals who have speech and communication disorders. So using Picture Dictionary, I can click on a word and I get photographs that pop up to help me comprehend the word and create meaning. And I think this is just a phenomenal feature to have built in. And then last spring in an update, we added translators. So anywhere upwards of, I think it's 65 different languages with this drop down that we could choose. And we could choose to translate just a word, or we could say, you know what, I have a student who would benefit from reading in their native language first. And so I'm going to change the entire document. And so here now we can have our document read in Spanish. And so you'll notice that's reading in an accented voice. It's very clear. I think it's a really wonderful read aloud voice. Personally, we also have Picture Dictionary that translates then, or is working in conjunction. And we have the ability to toggle between the original and the Spanish version at the top with just a click of a button. So pretty amazing. I'm not seeing any jaws dropping open yet, so I don't know if I've wowed you enough. Anyway.
Hey, Rachel, just so you know, sometimes when you're playing the sound, we're hearing it, but it's really low. So I don't know if you have the ability to just ramp that up a little bit.
Yeah, I'll crank that up. I noticed that happens to be something that's happening in Zoom lately, and I'm not entirely sure why. So I just want to make sure I'm tracking appropriately. I have that we're 14 minutes in, so I should have another 15. Is that correct, guys? Okay. Want to make sure that our users have all the time they need for Q&A. So this was in a nutshell, folks, the immersive reader when we're using OneNote, and we are using OneNote Desktop. There is an online version for anyone to access, but more importantly, if you're using a Mac or an iPad or a Chromebook, you may want to use the online version of OneNote. And the beauty about using the online version is it's always updated. So you're always going to have all the new features and it's always updated. I personally prefer my desktop version because that's just me, but you have a couple of different options. So let's go ahead and look at, I promised you that I'd show you an alternative method of loading content into OneNote, and I haven't checked the chat, but usually something will come up right about now like, okay, great, so you can load a PDF and a Word document in, but are there other ways? So I'm going to hop back into PowerPoint, and I'm going to show you two really quick videos. And again, those of you joining us today, I'm going to send you a link to my PowerPoint deck, and this will work for both this week and next week. And so you'll get to see links that are embedded into my PowerPoint and also the videos that I'm going to show you. So that's going to be accessible to all of you within a sharing link, okay? So please don't feel like if you've missed anything or I'm moving quickly that you won't have an opportunity to look at it again, because you will, and I'll tell you the ways that you will. Okay, so let's look at Office Lens here. Office Lens is something that is available for free in the App Store, and it is absolutely amazing, and it's just a game changer for my kids. So if you're not familiar with it, I'm going to play this video, and then we're going to talk about it again. Okay, so I'm going to rewind that. What we did was we scanned text with Office Lens, and this is what it does. It scans text, and then it runs OCR on that text. Right here, it's enabling the user to use Immersive Reader right then and there on their device. So imagine, again, this is a free app in the App Store, and you can use it for an iPad, an iPhone, and an Android. So this person is using, it's me, and it's an iPad, and they're wanting to use Immersive Reader right then and there. So again, remember how we looked at Immersive Reader and that overlay experience, visual experience you get in OneNote. You're going to get all of the same features right then and there on your iPad or your iPhone, so that you can simply have that ability to ear read your content. Okay, so built in right then and there. You can also load it into OneNote. Let me rewind it quickly here. So you'll notice you can send something to OneNote or OneDrive or even Word. Okay, and now I'm going to show you one more feature with Office Lens on our next slide. And this is really important because during this time of remote learning, we have a lot of packets coming home or coming back and forth to students. And even on a given, when we're not remote learning, that can be really difficult for students who have dyslexia, dysgraphia, or motor issues to get words into these tiny little spaces. And it isn't that someone hasn't thought of them, the students or their needs. It's just that this is simply, you know, one of the difficulties, and we have to find our workarounds and provide access, right? So here's what we do with it in my home. We're using Office Lens to snap a photo of a worksheet. Now what we're doing here is we're going up and we're grabbing a text box right up there in the corner that I'm pointing at. And then we're using that device's dictation feature so that we can dictate in a text box and overlay that onto the worksheet. Notice I'm moving that text box when I'm done dictating. So you can move that text box. You can also shrink or enlarge in that text box. You'll see that right here. So we're going to try to shrink that so it fits in there appropriately. And then the beauty of this tool is, especially, for my son's case in the worksheets, is I like to say that I saved a couple of lives with this. One, mine, and having to, normally a worksheet like that would take more than an hour. And the other is I saved his life and his frustration by removing that roadblock. And lastly, now his educator receives something that's, number one, it actually made it from home to school, and number two, it's legible. So, and it clearly articulates his thoughts in a manner that maybe we wouldn't have been able to do with handwriting as a dyslexic dysgraphic student. So you simply just send it to your recipient via email afterwards. So those are two tools there that enable the use of Immersive Reader. And now let's escape back out quickly. And we're gonna go back to OneNote. And I'm gonna show you my son's notebook. Here you're looking at, wait a second, am I sharing OneNote again? Nah, I figured I accidentally did that. I haven't kind of logged that in my memory that we've got to reshare every time. Okay, so here's OneNote, and one of my son's demonstration notebooks. He oftentimes, by the end of the day, is just done processing information and wants to do what we call ear read. And so here's where, again, Office Lens, we've loaded that into OneNote Notebook. And so you see these date timestamps and it says Office Lens. And so again, you can send information into Office Lens or from Office Lens to your notebook and keep all that information in there as well. So let's say he's going to school the next day. He needs to be able to take notes on this. This is something that he can also do. Okay. So I'm trying to be efficient today, and we have so much content to cover, and knowing that we're going to meet again next week, and so anything that I don't get to, we can elaborate on next week when we do a refresher and then go further into content. But what I'm going to do right now is we're going to go into another area where Immersive Reader is built in, and an area that, again, especially during this time of remote learning, and even when we get back to learning within our classrooms, is going to be really helpful to students. So we're using Edge browser. And Edge is Microsoft's internet browser that, again, is just phenomenal and has a number of, whoops, let's move my toolbar and use Edge, not Word Online. Okay. It has a number of tools built in, so I'm going to show you why this might be a feature that, again, remote learning, students are doing a lot of independent work and they need to do their own research. Well, this will greatly enable a student to be able to do their reading research without fatiguing or struggling with that reading part. So I've pulled up Newsela, and again, using Edge browser. And so if I click anywhere on this document, you'll see a list, and I can use my read aloud. And so now, whoops. Okay, so I tried to turn up the volume because I had feedback before that you weren't able to hear that very well. So we have the ability to highlight and text to speech any page using, any internet page using Edge browser. Over here, we've got our voice option. So again, we can choose the speed and choose a number of different voices. And then what you'll see coming, I've got the most updated version of Edge, and depending on your version, you may also have the features that we were looking at in OneNote, where you can change the background color, you can change your spacing. So look for those things as they're rolled out and added. And it might be that you've got a version where you have that already built in. So again, using Edge as your internet search engine, you're going to be able to utilize the Immersive Reader. Another thing I want to point out again for our educators so that they can relay to their students is built in to a lot of different ed tech apps and publisher websites is Immersive Reader. And so remember when I was calling attention to the icon, the Immersive Reader icon, it's there as well. You can go to different ed tech apps and publishers such as Flipgrid, Pear Deck, KidBlog, Nearpod. I mean, the list is is pretty infinite. It's in my PowerPoint deck, but you'll just go on their website and click on Immersive Reader and then get that Immersive Reader experience. Okay, so let's trying to make sure I cover, and let me check my time here. I've got 5 minutes left, is that right?
I think so. 5,
Okay.
10 minutes is good.
Okay, perfect, perfect. So I also want to call out that these tools are available in both Word and Word Online. So you've got your desktop Word version, and right now I'm in the online Word. Again, anyone who's using anyone can use it, but if you're using a Mac, an iPad, a Chromebook, you may want to utilize the online version of Word. And so similarly to when we were in OneNote, you're going to go to the View tab and you're going to click on Immersive Reader. And what's really wonderful about Immersive Reader and both Word and OneNote is they sync up with one another and they have memory. So this blue background and the larger text and the spacing were exactly how I had set things up in OneNote when I was demonstrating with you earlier. So I can go in and change it at any point, but what I really like is that it remembers how I prefer to consume my content, and I don't automatically have to change it every time I engage the Immersive Reader. So again, you have all of those text preferences, grammar options, and reading preferences built into Word Online. And Word Desktop, when we get into writing, you'll notice is a slight bit different, but you have those built into Word as well. So I'm going to, for the sake of catching us up a little bit, so that I don't take too much time, I'm going to move directly into writing. And instead of going into PowerPoint, I'm just going to straight up demonstrate. So what we're first going to do, and again, next week we're going to do a little review. So anything I feel like is absolutely necessary, I'll cover again next week. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show an example and to make sure that you guys can see this. So this is a handwriting example of one of my sons, and I just want to make sure you guys are able to, I shared appropriately. We should be looking at a handwriting example in OneNote, and I'm seeing some thumbs up, thank you. So the assignment was to write a one-page story in language arts, and he did do that. He filled up that page. He got really large at the end and in the middle, but now what's commonly experienced in students with dyslexia or dysgraphia, or even students who have mobility issues, when you're writing, getting the ideas from your head onto paper in a manual task can be very difficult. And so the more time that you spend doesn't necessarily result in better results. It just kind of gets frustrating. You lose out on richness of context and all sorts of other wonderful things. Whereas my son's teacher will tell me, I know he can paint me a beautiful story with words when we sit down and talk, but it just doesn't come out that way when he handwrites it. So here we are now looking at a typewritten example. And this is what he was able to produce completely independently on his own using the features in Word that I'm going to show you. And so you'll notice not only is it legible, but the amount of detail he has in there is pretty great. I mean, how many kids know about, can write an alien time traveler setting his time machine to 1878 before the Minneapolis Washburn flour mill explosion. Like, that's pretty cool. That's a pretty historical amount of detail specific to Minneapolis. So the dictated version took him 12 minutes to start to finish, and this handwritten example, 54 minutes of his class time. So significant difference there. Okay, so let's show you how we did that, and the great features that your students can utilize, whether they're remote learning at home or whether they're doing this within the classrooms, or whether we're talking about college students or even adults who struggle with getting content out in that typewritten fashion. And I will firstly show you using dictation. And so I'm going to put my cursor into and make a little space here. And I'm going to go to my home tab, and all the way over to the right is where you're going to find dictation. I'm a user of dictation software, period. I tongue-in-cheek say that I was previously a donor to software tools. I wanted something that truly removed the roadblocks I was experiencing, period. Today I have that tool built in and it's free. Okay, real story there, guys. My coworkers used to make fun of me because I would use my iPhone to dictate things all the time because it was so much more effective and it kept the same speed. And many of you know that when we're using software that doesn't truly keep up with someone's thoughts and constantly makes mistakes, it really adds further roadblocking. It's not accessibility, it's just kind of further causing issues. So today we have these things built in and it's absolutely wonderful. So using dictation was what my son used, but then in addition to that, many times our users need to be able to do something called read aloud. And so they need to have read back to them what they just dictated. And so that's here.
I'm a user of dictation software.
Okay, so under the review tab, we can use that read aloud and have it read aloud. And there's a little difference between the read aloud feature in the desktop version and the Word Online version. The online version can sound a little bit more clear, but either way, they're both getting our thoughts read aloud. And so there a student can go back in and add more context and detail or, add some punctuation. In addition to that, so those two in themselves were amazing for my son to be able to use in terms of independently creating content. In addition to that, we can go under the Home tab or the Review tab. So look at Review. Off to the left here, we've got Editor. Under my Home tab, I also have Editor over to the right. So when I click on that, I get an editor pane that pops up. And what this does is it walks through my entire document and picks up spelling, grammar, clarity, conciseness, and a multitude of potential errors that I could have. And so I can click on my spelling and I get a drop-down list of potential versions of the word principal that I was, that I could mean. But then even better than that, I don't have to work really hard at disambiguating between the versions of principal. I have context here that helps me to disambiguate. So I don't have to get out a thesaurus by myself, And I can even have those read aloud. Okay. So I can use the arrows to toggle through the entire document right up here, or I can use this one to move out and let's go down to clarity. So just so you know, the arrows are there to help move you through that document. I know we're coming up really close on the time here, so I'm trying to be aware of that. So the editor pane enables more independent writing. You'll use the different arrows to toggle through. And then one last thing I want to share with you built into Word that helps more effective writing, but also helps that your reading experience of content as well, is under our Review tab. You may have seen that we've got Translator housed over here. And so think about, again, our communication between educator and student when we have someone who's a non-native speaker or even educator parent. And it doesn't even have to be a non-native speaker. I mean, it could be just, we're working on a different language in our language course, but translating that document. And now we have a translator pane and we can choose up to anywhere up to, again, 65 different languages with this arrow. And we can just click on translate. And we are now written in Spanish. And remember, we've got our read aloud feature, or we click on the View tab and we've got our immersive reader feature. So all of this stuff built in at your fingertips for your use. And what I love to say here in wrapping up is that accessibility is something that's here for free for everyone. It is not a members only club for those who can pay. So, okay, let's go ahead and do some Q&A. I'm going to stop sharing this and I'm going to go back to PowerPoint unless you guys want to have the background for the chat here.
We're probably good, just with everybody's faces up. I
Perfect.
know we did get a couple of questions off the chat as well as in the chat box, just where there's so many tools that you've shown,
Yep.
and it's a little easy to kind of get lost in them. And so if you could just kind of tell us again, the different tools you showed, and then what. Especially this last one, were those features something that is just available if we're in a Microsoft Word document? Did we have to be in one of those specific tools you showed us? And how can this be made simple for the students,
Okay.
that we're teaching?
So let's start with, that was like a 3 questions within a question, I think. And
Yeah, it was.
I have a hard time holding on to all of that information as an individual who is dyslexic. So I'm going to start with the first one that I kind of locked in on. Is there's a lot that I'm covering. I know that, and it's difficult, but there's a couple of resources built in for you that I have. And so I'm going to show you quickly 2 different resources by sharing my screen and my PowerPoint. So I'm going to give the Oklahoma Able Tech my PowerPoint link, and they will share it with you, and you guys have access to anything in there that you want to use. So what we're looking at right now is called an interactive training, and it's broken things down into reading, math, communication, and writing. And what this is basically, it's a broken apart demo of what I do in 60 minutes. And so it takes everything apart and then makes it into an interactive training where it's a click through for you. And you're self-pacing. So you're clicking through and doing things like, it'll say, go to the slideshow button when we're talking about communication. That's when it actually does. Or it might say, go to the view tab and then to immersive reader. And so you have to click to make it progress. And so you're learning at the same time. Another thing that's built in is the inclusive classroom webinar. So again, this is a full 60 minutes of basically everything I typically cover in 60 minutes. So those are your 2 options to being able to kind of go back and listen to things and self-pace. And then Kimberly, if you tell me what were a couple other things that were asked within that question.
Just how to make it, simplify it for the students. So, I mean, perhaps, if someone has gone, I think you kind of answered it. If somebody does these trainings, they'll get that. But just, what were the 3, you showed OneNote, you showed immersive reader. Well, what were the things you showed, and do they all work together? Are they separate?
Okay. So we covered, just to do a little bit of a review, we cover what we were talking about is reading tools and writing tools. So those 2 silos you could think of it as. And we started out in the reading tool primarily is called Immersive Reader. And we started out in OneNote because that's one place that it is. And I wanted you to have awareness of the different places you're going to see that Immersive Reader icon embedded for your use. So OneNote, we looked at Word Online, we talked about Word Desktop, and we also looked at Edge Browser. So those are the categories where we covered the reading tool. The writing tool, we covered its usage in, actually I was in Word Desktop, and you can also use it in Word Online. And primarily we're looking at a dictation feature, we're looking at read aloud, and we're looking at the editor feature, okay? And one really cool website that we just created is a special education website. I'm going to send that to you guys so that you can share out with the recipients. I don't have it memorized off the top of my head, but it has an amazing amount of content right now for special education and remote learning, and we just created that at Microsoft. And then one more website, not to overwhelm people, is OneNoteForTeachers.com, and that's got a lot of kind of how do you get started with OneNote? How do I use these things? And then I'm always available via email for questions that people have. So that's another resource that's there.
Hey, Rachel, do you have the updated periodical table looking thing that shows where it has all those available? Because I think that's a great visual for teachers because they can see where the immersive reader has expanded across all of them. There he is.
Yep.
There
so
was There was one question about, sorry to interrupt, but I think you're going to talk about it if you can kind of cover it at the same time. There was a question about whether a student needs to have some sort of dedicated device for this. So, I think you might be able to address that as you're covering where these tools are all available.
Would you say a dedicated device? Do you mean like their own personal device?
I do believe that was what the question was asking. I mean, I also kind of had the thought that they could have been talking about it potentially could have been, if it was related to speech, I was thinking it could have been a speech device, but looking back on this question, she's asking about a child diagnosed with a processing disorder, dyslexia, and dysgraphia to gain access to OneNote. They need any sort of specific device for that, or
you can use any device to utilize these tools. I mean, obviously I'm biased in the type of device I'm using or my kids are using, but my children go to a school that uses Chromebooks, and they use that, and you can still access. Something that I hear frequently from educators is that if they're in a school where they're a Google school and they have Chromebooks, they typically, a lot of times they'll have a 365 account anyway, and educators do have that access for free. But sometimes they'll have to talk to their IT department to say, hey, allow me to access these things for this student. So those are a couple of things to know and keep in mind. But really, you can use any device. And students are going to come up with their preferences as well on what do they think works well on mom's computer or versus theirs,
One question just came in of, I think you need Office 365 for the dictation device, and it goes from class to class with them. And then I'll let you answer that. And then there was another question about OneNote.
So Word Online is accessible to anyone, any student, any educator, anyone. So you should not have to have, specifically an Office 365 account. And then I'm trying to understand the class to class piece. I mean, dictation, I could go log on to any computer in my household here and use the dictation feature. So I don't know if I'm understanding that correctly.
Yeah, I think that clarification would be, since this is a built-in feature within Microsoft Word and programs, as long as they have access to Microsoft Word, they have access to these features because it's
right.
built in, right?
Yes, it's built in. Mm-hmm.
And a couple of people asked about,
one thing I forgot to add about dictation is it's also in Outlook email and in PowerPoint. So it's not just in Word. If you have students that, are putting together information and utilizing PowerPoint to do that, they can use the dictation feature there. And the individuals can use it in Outlook, as I often do myself.
Great. A couple of people asked about how to access OneNote.
Okay. Can you give me more information on that in particular?
Let's see. How do you get to OneNote?
Okay, so my assumption,
I know that wasn't much more, but I just repeated the question.
So my assumption is maybe that individual doesn't have it on their device and hasn't yet seen it. So what you'll want to do is type into your search bar on your personal device, or even, it's funny that we use this term for everything now, or even Google it.
Right.
OneNote, and you may need to download it. You may need to start an account. Again, you could go to OneNoteForTeachers.com, and that's going to give you your best, how do I get started? But my guess is you may not be seeing it on your device, and you're kind of like, okay, so how do I get there? And so that would be my recommendation.
Perfect.
Hey, in rereading one question or getting a little bit more information about that dedicated device, I think the question relates to whether a student would need to have specific settings, like maybe they would be able to go from different classes and maybe they have a different device in one classroom than another. But do they have some sort of an account that would be saving any settings they might have had or anything like that? Or is it just like it's all new every time they go in there?
So we're talking about dictation, right?
I don't know if that was specific to dictation. I'm kind of expanding that into thinking about a student with a visual impairment they might need a specific font size that they've enlarged it to, or they might have contrast, background and highlight colors.
Yeah. So if they're using Immersive Reader, then as I was demonstrating, it saves how you set things up when you're using OneNote or Word. And so you can expect that it's going to be the same each time. And really, if you logged in on a different device, it'd be the same. So it has that memory piece. But it must be talking about the Immersive Reader versus dictation, because dictation is just a button you're pushing. So, and there's another thing about dictation is you can dictate in different languages too. So there's a little drop down. Let me stop sharing and go back into Word. There is oops, don't forget to share, Rachel. It's my learning curve here. I'm not doing so hot on it today.
You're doing great.
So here's this tiny little arrow here, and I don't have corrected vision, but it took me a while to realize there's an arrow. And so I'm telling you, it's tiny. So you get a drop-down list of different languages that you can dictate in as well. So that's something to know for individuals, as long as we're on that topic of dictation's just a button we're pushing.
An earlier question, I believe it was really early in your presentation, you had talked about, you referred to Boardmaker, but I believe you were talking about the picture dictionary, and maybe that had, the evolution of that had taken place with Boardmaker, or were you talking about some sort of specific Boardmaker tools where people would need to have, some kind of a subscription to Boardmaker or have those tools? What were you talking about there?
Okay, I was talking about, just going to share again. Boardmaker is a partner of Microsoft in creating an immersive reader. And so I was under our reading preferences right here. And when we have picture dictionary engaged, so we turn this on, you can see the Boardmaker right there, trademark. They helped us create they gave us the visual images to embed into any text that Immersive Reader is reading, so that individuals who need to comprehend or understand a word have that capability, and it's built in. So you don't need to do anything. It just lives and breathes right here in Immersive Reader under our reading preferences, but it is something you have to turn on.
That is cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I love it. I think it's awesome. And my kids find it amusing to click on certain words and see what kind of picture could possibly pop up. So they like to click on the words. They like to click on the word scary, and because like a monster pictures, they're like, that's mom in the morning. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. I get no love. Just throw me under the bus. No, I think all of us navigating kids through remote learning right now might be getting a little bit of flack from our children, right?
Right.
Hey, Rachel,
yeah.
One question I had from a parent the other day. They tried to use their child's student account to sign up for the free Microsoft account. How do they reach out to Microsoft if it doesn't acknowledge them, even though it has the word school in their email?
Boy, that's a good question. Let me ask and send you the answer.
Fabulous.
So give me that question again as I'm writing, would you please?
The school has Google Classroom, and it has the name of the school, and it actually has the word school in the name, but when they put it into the online get your free account,
Yeah.
It kicks them out and says it's not a valid school account.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's weird.
I'm hoping it's just overload on too many people trying to sign up right now.
It could be, had they tried it again.
Not positive. I need to send them all
Okay.
back to the education page, probably.
Okay, so let me just check and see what the recommendation is for something like that. And then maybe in the meantime, you can see if they've tried again as well.
There were two questions that I think go really closely together. One was related to, is Office 365 for educators free?
Mm-hmm. Yep, it is.
Okay, and then another one, just talking about how the school uses Google Docs. They're kind of a Google Doc school.
Yep.
Does Google Docs interact with these Microsoft tools?
Well, Google Docs is Google Docs, and so that's separately. And so you'd have to have a workaround. So like my youngest son is in a Google school, and the day before, for those of you that tweet, you can look up this tweet. My Twitter handle is @Rachel, RACHEL, M as in Mary, Berger, BERGER. So my son had a 29-page Google Doc he was reading, and he's a 5th grader. And I was like, wow, that's pretty intense. And he was like making all kinds of noises around the corner in his little learning space. And I was like, what's going on? And he's like, oh my God, it's so hard. Can you turn this into something for Immersive Reader? And so the answer, the long and short of it is yes. But when you are in Google, it's not like you can, or even Schoology, it's not like the Immersive Reader experience is embedded or added as a cognitive surface. They're not quite playing in the sandbox together yet. So what you need to do is download and save the PDF, and then open it up in OneNote, or maybe save it as a Word doc, pull it into OneNote. Again, if we're talking about doing it on the device, it's not like you can use Office Lens to snap a photo of something on a computer and do that. So the easiest workaround is downloading the PDF, and then putting it into Immersive Reader, and that's what we did with it. Or opening that PDF into Edge browser. That's an option too. So that's a
Rachel, I think we are just about out of time, unless if there's time for anything that was super important. But I do believe we answered all the questions in the chat. If not, we'll certainly try to get back to them. I'm going to share the PowerPoint again, just because we do have some contact information on it, and we have closing polls and things like that. So, Shelley, you want to bring up the closing polls?
Yeah.
And I'll keep talking because I know we're kind of down to the wire here. So Rachel will be joining us again next week. So while you're answering the polls, I'm just going to keep, promote this event for next week. She's going to be back next week, give a little review of what we talked about today, and then also delve a little bit deeper into math and communication tools that Microsoft has to help with that. My next screen is going to promote that, as well as the AT support team workshops that a lot of you will probably want to be a part of. The workshop number 3 that had to get rescheduled, that's coming up. The links to all of our workshops are on our website, as well as they'll be available for registering through Eventbrite. All right, so how's our poll looking? We were asking how you heard about the event. That really helps us with making sure that we're marketing in the right manner. Facebook and emails, things like that. Let's see. And then
overall, how would you rate this event is one of the other questions. And then we've added a couple of new questions that kind of fit along the lines of our virtual demonstration. Our demonstration criteria that we report to our federal agency when we're recording a demonstration, it's to make an informed decision on if you or someone that you serve, if this particular type of assistive technology can meet your needs. Or if you identify that no, in fact, this type of assistive technology does not meet my needs, or if you're still undecided. So we added those couple of questions. So since we did do literally a virtual demonstration of Microsoft built-in accessibility features, we wanted to ask those questions of you guys. And then querying on what type of future topics you would be interested in seeing. So it looks like we've got 38 out of 56 that have answered so far. If you'll just keep on clicking, I'll give it a few more. What time is it? It's exactly 2 o'clock.
It's 2 o'clock, yeah. And I've got the screen up. If you move your chat over, it might be kind of doubled up on each other, but I've got the PowerPoint slide up that's got Rachel's email address, v-raber@microsoft.com. The AbleTech phone number is there, 800-257-1705. Of course, our website, www.okabletech.org, and abletech@okstate.edu is there. Do you want to stop and share those?
Sure.
Okay.
You should be able to see them.
Yep. There you go. So it is 2 o'clock, so we're out of time. I want to thank everybody for joining us, especially thank you, Rachel, for joining us and presenting this fabulous information. We have so many educators and other interested parties on the webinar today, so thank you all for joining us. And thanks to Shelley and the other AbleTech staff members, and Tiffany Jenkins for connecting us with Rachel. I feel like it's been a great webinar. I hope you did too. And we hope to see you again next week. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
See you next
you.
week.
Bye.